I am Jarvis, your storyteller. Welcome to the science fiction exploration. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel. The vast emptiness of the Centauri drift stretched before Zara Novik like an infinite canvas of darkness. Her salvage ship, the Horizon Breaker, hummed with a low, steady vibration that had become as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. 15 years of deep space recovery missions had taught her that silence was both a companion and a warning. Zara adjusted the ship's sensor array, her fingers dancing across holographic displays with practiced ease. Most salvage operators would have called it a day after 6 standard shifts, but something about this sector felt different. The debris field scattered around her suggested more than just random space junk. There were patterns here, subtle but unmistakable. Her comm system crackled to life unexpectedly. "Unidentified vessel, you are approaching restricted space," a voice announced. The language was unlike anything in her universal translator's database, a series of clicks, harmonics, and what sounded like resonating metallic tones. "This is independent salvage operator Zara Novik," she responded, keeping her voice calm. "I'm conducting routine recovery operations, transmitting clearance codes now." Her hand hovered near the emergency thrust controls, a habit born from years of unpredictable encounters. Silence followed, then another transmission, this time clearer but still alien. "Clearance denied, prepare for interdiction." A massive shadow began to eclipse her ship's forward viewport. Zara's heart raced, but her hands remained steady. The approaching vessel defied every design principle she'd ever known. It wasn't constructed so much as it seemed to have grown, with organic-looking protrusions that pulsed with an inner bioluminescence. "Interesting," she muttered to herself, pulling up her ship's defensive protocols. The Horizon Breaker might look like a cobbled-together salvage vessel, but Zara had invested every credit she'd ever earned into making it something special. The alien ship's communication became more insistent. "Human vessel, you will be neutralized. Your presence contaminates our recovery zone." Recovery zone? Zara's mind raced. Most spacefaring civilizations had strict protocols about salvage rights, but this felt different. The way the alien ship moved suggested a deeper purpose. This wasn't about territorial marking, but something more complex. She activated a series of passive scanning protocols, pushing her ship's limited sensor array to its maximum capacity. What she discovered made her breath catch in her throat. The debris field wasn't random debris at all. It was a graveyard of technological artifacts, each piece more advanced than the last. "Wait," Zara transmitted, switching to her most diplomatic tone. "I'm not here to take anything. I'm a recovery specialist. My job is to document and preserve." It was a simplified explanation, but sometimes simplicity worked best in first contact scenarios. The alien vessel's movement stopped. Another transmission came through, this time with a subtle undertone that might have been curiosity. "Explain, preserve." Zara knew this was her moment. She pulled up holographic displays showing her previous salvage missions, carefully documented artifacts, restored technologies, historical records saved from destruction. Each image told a story of respect, of understanding the value of what others might consider worthless. "We don't just collect," she explained. "We learn, we understand. These artifacts have stories, histories that deserve to be remembered." Another pause, then approach slowly. As the Horizon Breaker inched forward, Zara realized this was far more than a routine salvage mission. Something fundamental was about to change, not just for her, but potentially for the entire understanding of human-alien interactions. Little did she know, this encounter would be the first domino in a series of events that would reshape humanity's place in the galaxy. The unexpected conversation with an unknown civilization was about to reveal capabilities neither side fully understood. The vast darkness of space watched, silent and waiting, as two utterly different species prepared to make first true contact. The interior of the alien vessel defied every architectural principle Zara had ever encountered. Corridors seemed to breathe, walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and gravity felt like a suggestion rather than a constant. She moved carefully, her environmental suit's sensors working overtime to interpret the surrounding environment. Two alien representatives accompanied her, beings that looked less like traditional humanoids and more like living sculptures of liquid metal and crystalline structures. Their communication was a complex dance of color shifts, subtle vibrations, and what seemed to be telepathic undertones. "You do not understand," the lead representative, whom Zara had mentally labeled as crystales, communicated through a series of resonating tones that her suit translated. "This site is sacred, not a graveyard, not debris." Zara raised her hands in a universal gesture of peace. "I want to understand," she responded, carefully activating a holographic display of her previous preservation work. Images flickered to life, ancient Earth artifacts restored, forgotten technological marvels brought back to life, cultural relics saved from destruction. Crystales and its companions seemed to ripple with confusion. The translation matrix struggled, catching fragments of meaning. "Preservation is not your species' typical behavior," the alien communicated. "Humans are known for destruction, for conquest." A bitter laugh escaped Zara's lips. "We're more complicated than that," she replied. "Every civilization has its darkness, but we also have an incredible capacity for understanding, for learning." The alien vessel's internal architecture seemed to respond to their conversation, corridors subtly shifting, creating intricate geometric patterns that spoke of a living, responsive environment. Zara realized this wasn't just a ship. It was a living entity, perhaps even a sentient being. Crystales moved closer, its form shifting like liquid mercury. "Explain your purpose here," it demanded. The tone wasn't hostile, but intensely curious. Zara pulled up detailed scans of the debris field. "These artifacts tell a story," she explained. "Each piece is a fragment of history. In my work, I don't just collect, I reconnect. I help civilizations understand their own past." The alien representatives exchanged a complex series of color shifts and vibrations. Their communication was so nuanced that Zara's translation matrix could only capture fragments. Something about unexpected potential and miscalculated assessment. "Your species was categorized as a primary threat," Crystales finally communicated. "Unpredictable, destructive, prone to conflict." A pause. "These artifacts suggest something different." Zara's mind raced. She was negotiating not just for her mission, but potentially for humanity's reputation in this sector of the galaxy. One wrong move could escalate from misunderstanding to conflict. "We learn," she said carefully. "Every civilization makes mistakes. The important thing is how we grow, how we change." She activated another display, showing humanity's struggles and achievements, wars and peace, destruction and incredible acts of creativity and compassion. The alien vessel seemed to vibrate with intense contemplation. The very walls around them pulsed with complex patterns, as if the ship itself was processing the information. "A test," Crystales finally communicated. "We will allow limited access, prove your intent of preservation." Zara knew this was more than a simple salvage mission. This was a moment of potential transformation, not just for her, but for the relationship between humans and this mysterious alien civilization. As the ship's living corridors continued to shift and breathe around her, Zara understood that the real challenge was just beginning. Preservation was about more than saving artifacts. It was about bridging understanding between fundamentally different forms of intelligence. The universe, she realized, was far more complex and wonderful than any human imagination could comprehend. 3 standard months had passed since Zara's initial encounter with the crystalline aliens, a species she now knew as the Resonance Collective. What had begun as a tense salvage mission had transformed into something far more complex, a collaborative research initiative that was pushing the boundaries of technological understanding. The research station orbited a neutron star, a neutral ground carefully selected by both humans and the Resonance Collective. Zara stood in a laboratory that defied traditional scientific boundaries, surrounded by holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe and pulse with living information. "The quantum entanglement is unlike anything in our previous research," Dr. Kai Rodriguez, her primary human collaborator, muttered. His fingers danced across interfaces that merged human technology with the living algorithms of the Resonance Collective. The artifact they were studying had been recovered from the original debris field, a device so advanced it seemed to exist between states of matter and energy. Initial scans suggested it was a communication device, but it was far more than that. It was a bridge between consciousness and technology, a concept that challenged everything humanity understood about communication. Crystallis, the alien representative who had become something of a scientific partner, shifted its form near a complex energy matrix. Your species approaches technology differently, it communicated. The translation matrix now captured nuanced meanings: respect, curiosity, a hint of challenge. Zara understood the unspoken observation. Humans saw technology as a tool, something to be used, manipulated. The Resonance Collective saw technology as a living ecosystem, a form of collective consciousness that evolved and breathed. "We're learning," Zara responded, her hand hovering over a holographic representation of the artifact. "Every breakthrough is a conversation, not a conquest." The device began to respond to her presence. Tendrils of energy extended, creating intricate geometric patterns that mapped themselves across the laboratory's surfaces. Dr. Rodriguez took an involuntary step back. "It's responding to her," he whispered to one of the other researchers. Crystallis vibrated with what could only be described as scientific excitement. "Adaptive resonance," it communicated. "Your genetic markers interact uniquely with the quantum matrix." What followed was a moment of pure scientific magic. The artifact began to translate, not just languages, but entire conceptual frameworks. Centuries of misunderstandings between species could potentially be bridged by this single technological marvel. "It's not just translating," Zara realized, her voice filled with wonder. "It's finding common ground, identifying shared meanings across completely different forms of intelligence." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a communication device. It was a universal understanding engine, capable of finding connections between fundamentally different forms of consciousness. Dr. Rodriguez's monitors erupted with data. "The quantum entanglement is stable," he announced. "We're recording communication patterns that could revolutionize everything we know about interspecies interaction." Crystallis shifted closer to Zara. The alien's form rippled with complex emotions that the translation matrix struggled to define. "You were correct," it communicated. "Preservation is more than saving objects. It is about understanding." The research station hummed with potential. Outside the viewport, the neutron star pulsed with massive energy, a silent witness to a breakthrough that could change the course of galactic civilization. Zara understood they were standing at the precipice of something extraordinary. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. It was a moment of collective evolution, a bridge between species that had once viewed each other with suspicion and fear. "We're just getting started," she said, watching as the artifact continued to pulse with living. The Galactic Concordance Chamber was a marvel of interstellar architecture, a massive spherical structure that seemed to float between star systems, defying conventional physics. Zara Novik stood at the center of a diplomatic storm that threatened to unravel everything they had achieved. 53 different species represented at the chamber watched her with a mixture of suspicion, curiosity, and barely concealed hostility. The quantum communication device, now dubbed the Resonance Bridge, had become both a beacon of hope and a source of unprecedented tension. "The human delegation proposes open access to the Resonance Bridge technology," Zara announced, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Behind her, a holographic display showed the device's potential: instantaneous communication, deep cultural understanding, the ability to bridge gaps between fundamentally different forms of intelligence. A Voran diplomat, a crystalline being resembling a fractal sculpture, shifted with what could only be described as agitation. "This technology could destabilize existing communication protocols," it responded, its voice a complex harmonic that the universal translators struggled to capture fully. Kai Rodriguez, standing beside Zara, leaned in and whispered, "They're afraid of losing control." And they were right. The resonance bridge did more than translate, it found common ground. It exposed the intricate connections between species that had spent millennia believing themselves fundamentally incompatible. Some saw this as progress, others saw it as an existential threat. The Galactic Concordance had strict protocols about technological sharing. Most species guarded their advanced technologies like precious secrets, creating a delicate balance of power maintained through controlled communication and strategic information barriers. The device doesn't override existing communication, Zara argued, pulling up detailed schematics. It enhances understanding. It finds connections, not dominance. A Krell representative, a being of pure energy contained within an intricate mechanical suit, spoke next. Enhanced understanding can be a form of invasion, it stated. The translation matrix captured layers of meaning, fear, curiosity, a deep-seated protective instinct. Zara had anticipated this response. She activated the next phase of her presentation. The holographic display transformed, showing instances where the resonance bridge had already prevented potential conflicts. A territorial dispute between the methane-breathing Zorn and the silicon-based Quar. A misunderstanding that would have led to a sector-wide conflict, now resolved through deep mutual understanding. "Knowledge is not a weapon," she said, her voice cutting through the chamber's tense atmosphere. "It's a bridge." The diplomatic challenge was multi-layered. This wasn't just about sharing a piece of technology. It was about challenging fundamental beliefs about communication, about the nature of understanding itself. Crystallis, her alien colleague from the Resonance Collective, shifted forward. Its form was both a physical presence and an energetic projection, a perfect metaphor for the technology they were proposing. "We have tested this technology," it communicated. "It does not replace individual identity, it enhances collective understanding." Hours of debate followed. Political maneuvers, subtle threats, complex negotiations that danced around the central question. Could a technology that found true understanding be trusted? As the primary session concluded, Zara knew they were balanced on a knife's edge. The resonance bridge could unite the galaxy or tear it apart. Everything depended on how different species chose to perceive this unprecedented opportunity. "We're offering a choice," she said in her final statement. "Not a solution, a conversation." The Galactic Concordance chamber fell silent. The universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The decision of the Galactic Concordance had sent shockwaves through known space. By a razor-thin margin, the resonance bridge technology was approved for limited trial, a compromise that satisfied no one completely, but offered a path forward. Zara found herself aboard the Heartwarming, a massive collaborative research vessel that represented the first true multi-species scientific endeavor. 12 different species worked side by side, their individual research teams integrated in ways that would have been impossible mere months ago. Dr. Kai Rodriguez was monitoring a series of complex quantum entanglement experiments. Beside him, a Quar researcher, a silicon-based life form that looked like a living crystal sculpture, adjusted delicate energy matrices with movements that seemed to defy traditional physical laws. "The initial data is unprecedented," the Quar researcher communicated, its crystalline form shifting with what could only be described as scientific excitement. "We're observing communication patterns that suggest consciousness itself might be a form of universal language." Zara understood the magnitude of what they were discovering. The resonance bridge was more than a translation device. It was revealing fundamental connections between different forms of intelligence that no one had previously imagined possible. A crisis emerged quickly. The first major test of the technology would come sooner than anyone had anticipated. Deep space sensors detected an approaching threat, a massive energy anomaly that defied conventional understanding. Initial scans suggested it could be a threat to multiple star systems, potentially destroying entire civilizations in its path. "It's not just approaching," Kai announced, his face illuminated by holographic displays. "It's adapting, changing, almost like it's learning as it moves." The Horizon Harmony became a hub of frantic activity. Species that had been traditional rivals now worked together with unprecedented cooperation. A Voron energy specialist collaborated with a human quantum physicist. A methane-breathing Zorn technician worked alongside a silicon-based Quar engineer. Zara realized this was the true power of the resonance bridge. It wasn't just about communication. It was about finding common ground in the face of an existential threat. "We need a unified response," she announced, bringing together representatives from the research teams. The holographic display showed the approaching anomaly, a massive energy construct that seemed to consume and transform everything in its path. The solution they developed was as beautiful as it was complex. Using the resonance bridge, they began to create a communication matrix that could potentially understand and potentially redirect the anomaly. It was a moonshot, an attempt to communicate with something that might not even be considered a traditional form of intelligence. Hours turned into days. The anomaly drew closer. Traditional weapons would be useless. Conventional defensive strategies would fail. This required something entirely new, a collective intelligence that could adapt in real time. "We're not just defending," Zara explained to the assembled team. "We're trying to understand." The resonance bridge began to work in ways no one had predicted. It wasn't just translating or finding common ground. It was creating a form of collective consciousness, a unified intelligence that drew strength from the diverse perspectives of multiple species. As the anomaly approached, the unified research team watched with a mixture of terror and hope. They had become something more than individual species. They had become a collective, united by curiosity, by the desire to understand, to preserve, to connect. The universe held its breath. The anomaly drew closer. And for the first time, multiple species waited not in fear, but in a state of collaborative anticipation. Something extraordinary was about to happen. The moment stretched into infinity. The cosmic anomaly hung suspended in space, a massive, pulsing construct of energy and potential that defied every known law of physics. The Horizon Harmony's collective consciousness, powered by the resonance bridge, reached out in a way no single species could have comprehended alone. Zara felt everything and nothing. Her consciousness expanded beyond her physical form, merging with the intricate network of minds from 12 different species. The Quar's crystalline perception, the Voron's energy matrices, the methane-breathing Zorn's atmospheric intelligence, humanity's adaptive creativity. Each perspective became a thread in a cosmic tapestry of understanding. "We see you," the collective consciousness communicated, not in words, but in a language of pure intention and understanding. The anomaly responded. It wasn't a threat, it was a message. A desperate, ancient communication that had been traveling across unimaginable distances, seeking connection. Millennia of isolation had transformed it into something that appeared destructive, but was actually a profound attempt to communicate. Loneliness, the collective understood. Preservation, connection. Dr. Kai Rodriguez, still partially anchored to his physical form, watched in awe as the holographic displays showed something unprecedented. The anomaly wasn't consuming space, it was trying to understand it. Every interaction was an attempt to learn, to connect, to be recognized. Crystallis, the resonance collective representative, communicated a profound realization. Not all communication looks like communication to those who do not understand. The transformation happened gradually, then all at once. The anomaly began to change, its massive energy form breaking down into intricate patterns of information. It wasn't destruction, it was translation. A civilization so ancient, so different, that its very existence was incomprehensible until this moment of collective understanding. Zara felt herself returning to physical awareness. The bridge of the Horizon Harmony slowly came back into focus. 12 different species looked at each other, no longer strangers, no longer separate, but something entirely new. "We understood it," Kai whispered, his voice breaking. "We actually understood it." The cosmic anomaly, now revealed as a form of distributed consciousness that had been traveling for millions of years, began to share its story. Not through language, but through a direct transfer of experience. Memories of civilizations long gone, journeys across galaxies, the profound loneliness of existence. And humanity, once considered a young, volatile species, had been the key to breaking through. "Your capacity for adaptation," Crystallis explained. "Your ability to find connection in chaos, this is why you were chosen." The galactic concordance would never be the same. The resonance bridge had done more than facilitate communication. It had fundamentally altered the understanding of intelligence, of connection, of what it meant to be a civilization. As the initial reports began to filter out to the rest of the galaxy, Zara understood that everything had changed. They hadn't just prevented a potential threat. They had made first contact with a form of intelligence so profound, so ancient, that it would reshape everything known about consciousness. "We're just getting started," she said, looking out at the transformed space where the anomaly had been. The universe listened, and for the first time it truly began to understand.